Foxtrot rushed into the meeting room when the elevator reached it, and a fearful look covered his face. He and Quinn were standing by the entrance near Miser in the meeting room. The Sentinel, Vax, and the Paradox Master stared at Foxtrot, waiting for the news. "We've got intel on where Ray is, and it's... I don't know." "It's what?" Vax could tell it wasn't good. "I'm not fighting Ray, not again." The Sentinel refused. "I don't have a death wish." "Sentinel, Andrometron somehow... Whatever Ray shot into the planet, it turned on and it knocked the entire planet off orbit. It's plummeting into Ilsos right now. It won't do much because of its size and it's hollow, but no one knows why or how he's done it. Vistor's begging for someone's help." "Vistor? The false king?" Miser asked to clarify. The Sentinel straightened his stance and thought for a second. "I'll go figure out what's happening, but I'll go alone." "Sentinel, you can't do that." Quinn tried to talk sense into him. "What do you know?" The Sentinel snapped. "I can't let Ray do what he did to me to anyone else." "You still need a distraction, Sentinel," Miser reminded him. "I'll go." Vax stepped past Miser and Foxtrot at the doorway. "He'll want to target someone with some emotional baggage. I'll be the distraction." "No." The Sentinel and the Paradox Master spoke at the same time. "Not you," the Sentinel made clear. "Why not?" Vax complained. "I don't want anyone dying. Or worse." The Sentinel paced around. "Sentinel, the universe is falling apart. The multiverse is at stake. I think we need to put some things into perspective a little bit here." Vax tried to convince him. "I'll go." The Paradox Master stopped the Sentinel's pacing. "We have the same past, same tragedies. He'll target me." "Look, I already said I don't want anyone to..." The Sentinel protested. "You survived it, and I've survived a lot worse. I can handle it, Sentinel." Miser and Foxtrot were mumbling to each other, and Miser looked up. "Sentinel, you better hurry." "Fine, 5, you're coming with me." The Sentinel gestured toward the Paradox Master. "Don't call me 5. I'm not a Sentinel, not anymore." "I'm not going to call you the Paradox Master every time. Deal with it." "You sound a lot like one." The Paradox Master smiled. "Whoa, I wonder why." The Sentinel remarked sarcastically as he flashed away. The Paradox Master chuckled and flashed away shortly after. Both appeared in the hangar of the Pantheon station. The hangar room was large and white, and it sat in between the two flip pyramids of the space station, surrounded by empty space. The Sentinel could see the progress of the garish lasers on Earth pulling Janistar and Amalga 5. Vax stood nearby with her time machine. "Don't be alarmed, I rerouted your teleports." "How?" The Sentinel and the Paradox Master questioned at the same time. "Not important. What's important is that Ilsos can't be teleported to right now. Something down there is preventing it. Some sort of whitelist like on Janistar." "So how are we supposed to get there?" the Sentinel asked. "My ship?" Vax answered. "The Riptide's sitting in the hangar waiting to be used. We'll have to fly in. That's a whole galaxy away. We won't get there in time, even with traveling at light speed. The Riptide can teleport when in space with my box. We'll just teleport outside the planet and fly in." "Is this a tricky way of letting you come with us?" the Paradox Master questioned Vax. Vax smiled. "Follow me." The Sentinel and the Paradox Master shared a concerned look with each other before following. They boarded the Riptide and sat down. The ship rose from the hangar and blasted out into space. Vax flipped a few switches and the ship teleported. The massive blue-green planet of Ilso snapped into view. The gas giant was a near perfect round shape except for one spot. "That's where Andrometron hit," the Paradox Master pointed. The gas separated. It was as if the planet was crashing through clouds. The impact point looked like the eye of the storm. All the gas swirled into a dark blue and black mixture of clouds, and lightning struck throughout it. Andrometron was barely visible above the gas, almost swallowed up by the planet's atmosphere. "What's the plan?" Vax asked. "There's no way we can save Andrometron, not now," the Sentinel argued. "We need to get down to Ilsos, protect the king, and stop Ray before he can do any more damage." "Alright," Vax nodded. Andrometron was no longer visible, now completely submerged in the gassy exterior of Ilsos. Vax pushed down on the throttle and the ship began zooming past the asteroid clone facilities that made up one of Ilsos' rings. They quickly approached the outer layer of gas and the cockpit's view slowly became obstructed. The blue-green gas was thick and cloudy and they couldn't see anything. "You sure we're headed the right way?" the Sentinel asked. A strike of lightning sparked across in front of them. The gas quickly grew darker and began to thin out. As they passed through a cloud, Andrometron became visible. The planet was still crashing down to the surface of Ilsos' core. In slow motion, the planet plummeted through the clouds. It seemed as if they were chasing a burning stationary planet through cloudy space. An orange glow in the gas illuminated the burning planet. Lightning struck around it. "Yup." Vax quickly began to adjust the flight path, flipping switches and turning dials. "We're following the course of Andrometron." Lightning struck and flashed before them, following the plummeting planet. The crashing planet was burning bright orange and rocks began to separate from it. The intense gravity of Ilsos pulled at the planet with so much force it was beginning to rip apart. "Strap in," Vax turned around. "The pull of gravity is pretty strong here. Now we're passing through the neon rain." Lightning flashed with almost no pause between, filling the sky with blue. The glass of the cockpit was bombarded with glowing orange neon rain and hit with small chunks of rock. "Are those pieces of Andrometron?" the Sentinel examined. "Maybe pull away from the planet." "No, it's hydrogen hail." Vax twisted the throttle and the ship sped up. The Riptide approached Andrometron quicker. "Nothing we can do about it. Hang tight." "Vax, what are you doing?" the Paradox Master yelled. "You can't normally just fly into Ilsos. Its atmosphere is too thick." "But Andrometron's is perfect for flight," Vax yelled over the sounds of Andrometron being crushed. "But I have to make it in before Ilsos' atmosphere rips Andrometron's to shreds." "Vax, are you crazy? That'll never work," the Sentinel yelled. "I forgot to tell you." Vax began to pull back on the throttle as the ship quickly approached Andrometron. The Sentinel and the Paradox Master's heads pushed back against their headrests as the ship sped up, pushing them deeper into their seats. I made it through a black hole's event horizon, for real this time. This ship can do anything. The ship leveled out moments before hitting the surface of Andrometron. They sped across the plains of the planet and dodged flying chunks of the ground. The man-made, straight-edged riverbeds were dried out completely, and the grass had all but burned away. Just past the horizon, the gas of Ilsos began to fade, and the colonized core of the planet was becoming visible. We made it past the clouds, the Paradox Master pointed out. You can pull away from Andrometron now. No, I can't. It would take too much thrust to escape this planet's gravity. Vax sped up even faster. The Sentinel started to think there was no limit to the ship's speed. Are you planning on following the planet all the way down until it crashes into the core? The Sentinel stood up from his seat. The Paradox Master stood up and put his hand on the Sentinel's shoulder, forcing him to sit back down. Vax didn't answer. A chunk of planet dislodged in front of them and started flying toward the ship. It was too large for Vax to dodge, so she lowered the ship into a dry riverbed. More and more rocks flew overhead, and there was no way to get out of the riverbed. The ship made sharp turns, weaving through the labyrinth of the planet's rivers. With each turn, the ship shook to its core, narrowly missing the river's edges. The cockpit was bombarded with dirt and chunks of rock. The Paradox Master stared straight ahead. The Sentinel stared out of the side windows, watching as the ship's wings scraped against the dirt and concrete. A dead end in the riverbed approached, and an avalanche of rocks shot overhead. There was no way to pull up. Vax spotted a cave entrance in the side of the river up ahead. She twisted the steering handles as fast as she could manage, turning her whole body with it. The Sentinel and the Paradox Master screamed as the ship weaved through the cave entrance like a thread through a needle, narrowly missing the dead end. The wings clipped themselves against the cave walls, but Vax pushed forward anyway. I'm gonna die, the Paradox Master mumbled to himself. I'm immortal and I'm going to die. Vax, tell me you know what you're doing. There's a way out of this, right? The Sentinel asked. As the ship barreled through the cave, the sounds of the crashing planet were subdued to a distant rumble. Vax stayed silent and hyper-focused. Vax? The Paradox Master waited. You've got this. Vax mumbled to herself as she flicked a switch. You've got this. You're the best. You've got this. She pulled the lever underneath the steering handles and closed her eyes. Just like the Venus Cascades. Just like the Venus Cascades. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. Brace! She yelled. What? The Sentinel and the Paradox Master looked ahead to see the end of the cave. Light barely shone through the solid dirt wall ahead of them when Vax blasted a charged laser burst of fire at the cave end. Dirt and rock blasted outwards as the riptide smashed through a hill and spun in the air before slamming onto the surface of Andrometron, skidding as it pulled itself back up. The engine sputtered and the wings wavered as the bottom of the ship scraped against the scorched dirt. Yes! Vax exclaimed victoriously. Watch out! The Paradox Master yelled. A wave of boulders came barreling toward them in the distance. Ahead of them, just between them and the boulders, sat another cave entrance blocked off with planks of wood. Vax stayed focused. Vax, the Sentinel said in a worried tone as the boulders bounced off the ground, pushing up more dirt, approaching them in their escape quicker. Hold on! Vax yelled as she twisted the steering wheel with a single quick motion before letting go, allowing the wheel to spin. The ship flipped and barreled into the cave entrance, smashing through the wood just as two massive boulders crashed into the land on either side of them. The rocks would have crushed the wings had the ship not spun in a particular way. As they sped through the cave entrance, they found themselves inside of the hollow planet, flying across the underside of the crust, through upside-down city streets and skyscrapers. We need to get out of here, the Sentinel leaned forward in his seat. We've been falling for too long, there can't be much atmosphere left. We've got plenty of time, the Paradox Master assured the Sentinel. Just as he did, what they could see of the inside of the planet ahead of them began to tear apart, opening a hole with a view of Ilsos' surface below. We've got significantly less time than I anticipated. Vax? The Paradox Master turned his attention to Vax. On it, Vax said with confidence. With a push forward of a lever, the riptide zoomed forward, toward the Ilsos' surface and a hole in Andrometron. She dodged the roots of the planet's core and flew betwixt them, dodging falling debris and skyscrapers. She aimed the ship up as it twirled through the hollow planet. She fired and burst through the thin and crumbling crust, re-emerging on the doomed planet's surface, flying close to it. The Sentinel squinted, looking out toward the horizon. As dusk cleared, he saw the city lights of Ilsos shine through. Pull up! He yelled. He watched in awe as Andrometron crashed into the cities below, crumbling into massive chunks of stone and dirt. Entire sections of ground shot out like the planet was a cannonball that had met its mark. Vax's face was determined, and she kept going. Vax, what are you doing? Pull up! The Paradox Master begged. Everything seemed to be going much faster now. The planet's horizon was swallowed up by Ilsos, and the amount of land ahead of them rapidly seemed to shrink as the ground of Ilsos grew closer and closer, and as debris shot back out into the atmosphere. Vax pulled back on the steering apparatus, pushing her chair back as far as it would lean. She screamed as she pulled harder and further. The riptide slowly followed the slope of the collision. She flew the ship through rocks and flying rubble, level with the ground of Ilsos. She maneuvered the ship between skyscrapers and narrow streets of Ilsos as the burning corpse of Andrometron chased them, crashing full speed into the cities behind them, cracking like an egg. The ground lifted from behind as Andrometron seemingly imploded on itself. A crater was forming and the rubble was being pushed up behind them, catching up and flying overhead. A blanket of rock was about to swallow the ship up. Vax, go faster! The Sentinel crushed the chair's armrest with his metallic arm. The Paradox Master tried his best to stay seated. I'm trying! She stood up from her seat, leaning forward on the throttle. Come on, come on! She glanced at the ship's speedometer as it approached its maximum. The Paradox Master glanced out of the window to his side and spotted another ship. Sentinel, he yelled. The Sentinel turned his attention to see the ship. Ray, he grumbled. Vax, come on, step it up. The rubble began to fall like a crashing wave ahead of them. A sliver of space was left for them to fly through, but they were too far back. Vax gripped the ends of the throttle hard, firing lasers at the rocks ahead, trying desperately to break an entrance. They were quickly approaching the wall of rock, and it felt closer to them. Ray's ship sped ahead. A massive orange-yellow laser shot from its front, and a hole was made in the rubble. It sped through. "Vax, come on, we're almost out!" the Sentinel yelled. "This is it!" The Paradox Master closed his eyes. Vax yelled as she pushed harder, trying desperately to go faster. The ship swept through the hole as it closed behind them, and rock hit rock, and for a moment it was silent. A moment later, an explosion boomed. A shockwave burst from the collision, and the blast of air launched the ship forward in a massive boost, pushing the Sentinel, Paradox Master, and Vax into their seats. The wave of destruction was still following them as the planet continued to be swallowed up by ensues. When the hole closed as they escaped, it scuffed the ship. Its back wings were hit hard. The ship started to fall. Ray sped ahead of them. "Hold on!" Vax stood up and leaned over the controls, flipping switches and turning dials quicker than the Sentinel had ever seen before. Two grappling hooks shot from the front of the Riptide, latching onto the back of Ray's ship. Vax pressed a staging button, and the damaged back half of the ship went flying off into the rubble of the crashing planet behind them. The Riptide was gliding behind Ray's ship, swaying side to side. Vax turned around and secured an Andrometron rifle on her back. "Alright, boys, let's board." She lifted her hand and pressed a button on the ceiling. A hatch opened, and the screaming winds of ensues roared over the rumbling Andrometron burning behind them. She jumped out of the ship. The Paradox Master shrugged at the Sentinel and followed her. The Sentinel followed him shortly after. Vax stood precariously on the edge of the Riptide. Both the Paradox Master and the Sentinel could see what she was planning next. "Are you insane?" The Sentinel mouthed the words. There was no way he could be heard over the bombardment of the sound. Vax withdrew her rifle. She pressed the button and split into two pistols and jumped. The Paradox Master and the Sentinel quickly ran to the edge of the Riptide for her. She had a plan. The pistols had already reattached as a rifle, and she was using it as some sort of zipline across the grappling hook to Ray's ship. The Paradox Master shook his head and sprouted wings of plasma on his back. He flew over to Ray's ship. The Sentinel hopped up and down on the tips of his feet, preparing himself for some sort of plan on how to get across. He'd forgotten how to use his wings. He knelt on his knees, and his fists flared. With a charged leap, he launched himself across. Electric plasma trailed behind him in bolts as they helped propel him forward. He came short of the ship and reached out with his metal arm and lashed onto the back of the Ray's ship with a crushing grip. The Paradox Master helped him up. Vax came to a stop at the end of the hook and pulled herself up. The three of them looked back and watched as the Riptide was consumed by the quickly approaching rubble. Vax held her chest. Sweat dripped down her forehead. The Sentinel looked down at the roof hatch on Ray's ship. He held out his metal arm and shot the box at the hatch's hinge. "Let's end this," he said. The box broke the hinge and the hatch opened. The box flew back into the Sentinel's palm. The three of them jumped into the ship, and the Paradox Master closed the hatch behind him. They looked out of a window and watched as the crashing planet drifted further and further away from them at a faster pace. The ship was speeding up. The Sentinel cautiously made his way toward the cockpit of the ship, and Vax and the Paradox Master followed. The Sentinel stopped in his tracks when he saw the silhouette of Ray in the seat. The Sentinel spun the seat around, prepared to fight, but was taken aback by what he saw. Nothing but a cardboard box taped to the top of the seat with a smiley face poorly drawn on it. The controls of the ship were tied down with a rope, and a sign that read, "Gone fishing." "Sentinel, what is it?" Vax asked. "It's a trap." The Sentinel looked down at the set course for the ship, Visitor's Palace. "It's a trap!" The Sentinel turned around. "We need to get out of here!" "Run!" The Paradox Master ushered Vax ahead of him. They ran back to the room with the hatch, but it was sealed shut. The Paradox Master bombarded it with a concentrated plasma laser and shot himself out of it. He helped Vax up and then the Sentinel. They stood on top of the speeding ship and watched as it approached Visitor's Palace. Andrometron had crashed far behind them. They were out of the wave of the destruction's reach. The Paradox Master's plasmatic wings flared. "Come on." He held out his arms. Vax and the Sentinel ran up to the Paradox Master and stood on either side of him as he wrapped his arms around them. He flapped his wings and launched from where he stood to the palace. When he landed, his wings vanished, and he let go of Vax and the Sentinel. The planet was still shaking violently from the crash. It was raining ash and rock from the crater nearby. Ray's ship was approaching the tower at Visitor's Palace quickly. It crashed through it, burning it, crashing into the city blocks behind the palace. The tower came falling down. "Quick, get inside!" The Sentinel waved for the Paradox Master and Vax. They ran into the palace doors before the rubble of the tower blocked them in. They ran inside, approaching Visitor on his throne, but were stopped by an outstretched blade. "Halt!" Agro yelled, holding a sword. He glanced at the Sentinel. "Why would you do this?" "What are you talking about?" The Sentinel mumbled. "You know full well what he's talking about, Sentinel," Visitor blabbered from atop his throne. "You crashed Andrometron into ensues." "What?" Vax yelled. "No, he didn't. We're here to help you." "Ray did it," the Paradox Master clarified. "Are you telling me," Conchna, who stood beside Visitor, began, "that the weapon that I created just attacked us? He's wearing a suppressor helmet. He can't betray us." "You can't create a weapon with a mind of its own and expect it to do what you intended it to do, Conchna," the Sentinel reminded him. "You, of all people, should know that. You killed your maker, and Ray will do the same." "Silence!" Conchna yelled. "Is he telling the truth, Conchna? Is it possible that Project Ray could have defected?" Visitor pled, hopeful that it was not the case. "Not possible. Ray informed me that you were the one that did this." A staff extended from Conchna's sleeve, and soon he was holding his scythe in hand. Ray isn't the Andromedan word for manipulator for nothing, the Paradox Master chuckled. Why would you do this? Conchna stared the Sentinel down. Exactly. Why would I do this? The Sentinel backed up as Conchna stepped forward. Even though we're on opposing sides here, I think it's obvious for you to see that this is out of character for me. It's well within the bounds of something Ray would do. Do not turn my project against me. I will not be held responsible for this. Conchna yelled, pointing his scythe at the Sentinel. Get away from him! Vax clenched her hands into fists, and they lit aflame with plasma. The Paradox Master flared his wings and flapped them, pushing Conchna back. We aren't here to fight, we're here to help. Look, if we put some of our disagreements aside, we'd be willing to... The Sentinel put up his hands as a gesture, only to be interrupted by Conchna tossing his scythe like a throwing knife until the blade shot through the Sentinel's abdomen. He stumbled to the ground, and with a raspy voice, he squinted at Conchna and groaned. Rude? No! Vax pushed her hands outward, and a ball of plasma pushed Conchna back. Keep the blade in, the Paradox Master instructed the Sentinel. The Sentinel ripped the scythe from his flesh and tossed it aside. He stumbled back and gasped for air as blood spilled from the wound. You idiot! The Paradox Master withdrew his phase gun from his holster. Vax screeched as she cornered Conchna. Vax punched him square in the face, but he didn't flinch, kicking her and pushing her back. She slid until she came to a stop next to the scythe that stabbed the Sentinel. The Paradox Master shot the Sentinel with a phase gun. Vax stood up and approached Conchna. She swung the bloody scythe and Conchna blocked with his rifle. The tip of the blade stopped a mere hair's width from in front of his face. He pushed back and Vax stumbled. He pressed a button on the side of his rifle and split it into two pistols. He pointed a pistol at Vax as she ran at him holding the scythe above her head, and he shot. Vax stumbled to her knees as she held her heart. You've got to be kidding me. The Paradox Master grumbled to himself. He pointed the phase gun and fired. He missed. The stray shot hit Conchna in the shoulder. The Paradox Master fired again, this time hitting Vax. Vax fell as she started to phase. Conchna stumbled and stared at his hands. Oh no, no. The Paradox Master stepped back. The Sentinel, his eyes glowing and his veins pumping, looked up. Oh, great. Vax's hair shortened, dropping down to her chin, and became a lighter brown as her face rounded, her eyes grayed, and she stood up, shorter than before. Her body was glowing with plasma. Conchna held out his hands. Plasma burst from them, spreading across the palace like an unstoppable forest fire. Conchna stepped forward and stomped his foot on the ground. The floor of the palace cracked as plasma burst from the cracks like a volcano spewing lava. Conchna had phased as well, looking unrecognizable, slightly shorter, with light brown hair and skin not as pale. He paced around Vax and the Sentinel. The Sentinel stood tall, taller than he'd ever been. His face was hard and cold. His eyes were dark and colorless. A beard trailed from his face, longer and more unkempt than he'd had since his second incarnation's early life. He had phased as well. He glanced down at his arm. The calcareous prosthetic remained, and questions would have to wait. Stand down, Conchna, the Sentinel demanded with a new, hoarse voice. Never, Conchna cackled. Not now that I have what I deserved. Conchna dropped his scythe and aimed forward with both his hands at Vax and the Sentinel. Energetic beams of erratic and uncontrolled plasma spewed from them. The Sentinel and Vax held out their hands as they pushed back with their own plasma. The Paradox Master lifted his hands and blasted Conchna. The blast sent Conchna flying into the steps that led up to Vistor's throne. Conchna crashed at the top, near Vistor, who inched away, afraid, clinging to his head with his stubby arms. Conchna leapt from the top of the stairs, fist raised and ready for a punch. He hit the ground, landing on his knee. As his fist hit the floor, crystal spikes of plasma launched from the ground. The Sentinel held out his metal arm. A spike hit it and shattered before it can continue extending. Vax jumped, launching herself with plasma and flipping over the extension of a spike right from underneath her. The Paradox Master crossed his arms over his chest. The spike that protruded in front of him came mere inches from impaling him before his entire body burst into flames that quickly solidified into a sort of metal, shattering the spike on impact. The metal casing around the Paradox Master unraveled as flaming wings. Face it, Conchna, you can't stop us, Vax said confidently. You're 1 against 3, the Sentinel yelled. No, Conchna yelled. I will not yield after achieving the greatness that eluded me for years. I'll finally be accepted by the elite. What elite? The Sentinel yelled. Your creation destroyed them and their planet. Then so be it. Conchna flicked his arms out as plasmatic blades extended from his wrist. But his triumph was cut short as he fell to the floor screaming in pain. Aggro had sliced at his ankle with Conchna's own scythe and kicked behind his knee. Aggro forced the scythe into Conchna's back, pushing all the way through his chest. The blade retracted into the staff, and Aggro stood back, looking at the staff. Conchna curled up on the floor, bleeding out and coughing. He stared at the Sentinel. This isn't over, he gasped. The Sentinel stared into his dying eyes. Blood soaked the ground around Conchna. Project Ray will redeem me. If you think what you've made is a good thing, then you're mistaken. The Sentinel shook his head. Conchna chuckled weakly with his dying breaths. Vax glanced up at Aggro, who was clutching the scythe and breathing heavily, staring blankly at his dead boss. Thanks. Vax nodded and turned around to run to the Sentinel. Sentinel, are you okay? Vistor watched the whole scene play out right before him. Confused and in shock, he mumbled, What just happened? You've changed, the Sentinel remarked of Vax, ignoring Vistor. As have you? Vax admired the Sentinel. As is tradition. He smiled. I'm just glad you're alive. Yeah. Vax smiled, looking up at him. How do I look? Remarkably like your first incarnation, the Sentinel took notice. Purple hair and all? Vax asked. I don't think phasing would do that, the Sentinel smiled. I guess it was just a phase. She joked with a smirk, then turned around, looking at Aggro. Why'd you help? Aggro, please explain what is happening, Vistor demanded. Aggro glanced at Vistor, clenching the scythe in his hands tighter and stepping back nervously. He hesitated. His grip loosened. Conchna wasn't right, he explained. His shoulders dropped and he let out a drawn-out breath as he seemed to calm down. He never was. He killed all the clones without a second thought, and he was going to kill you. I thought we were the good guys, but if Ray really did this, I can't justify that. Thank you, the Sentinel whispered, adjusting to the new gruffness about himself. No problem. Aggro turned his attention to Vistor. Stop going after Janistar and the Calcarus. This is bigger than that. Conchna created a monster, and as the king you need to fix this. Oh, I should have seen this coming. Vistor looked away, unable to look at Conchna's lifeless body. I'll try my best. Leave now, before I change my mind. He shooed away the Sentinel with his stubby arm. We don't have a ship or a way out of here. The Paradox Master shook his jacket to dry it of the Sentinel's blood. From what I understand, there's no teleporting in or out of this place? That was a recent installation. Stole the technology from Janistar, Vistor informed him. Aggro, flip the switch. Aggro walked away and down a dark corridor. Go home. We'll deal with this. Your planet just got hit with another planet that happened to be home to the governmental headquarters for your entire system. You can't just deal with this on your own. Contact us. The Sentinel nodded, and he, Vax, and the Paradox Master flashed away. They appeared back in the meeting room on Janistar, greeted by Foxtrot, Miser, and Quinn. They all stared at the Sentinel and Vax for a second before realizing what had happened. Sentinel? Is that you? Quinn asked, recognizing the metal arm. He phased. Foxtrot remarked of his new appearance. He turned his full attention to Vax. So is Vax. He's what? Quinn asked. Revived himself from death by basically becoming a new person. Miser explained. He does that sometimes. 5 times in the last war. Didn't make it easy for us keeping track of him. What's with the arm, by the way? The Sentinel asked the Paradox Master. Phasing works with what it's got. Can't grow new limbs without enough extra material to move around, he explained. The Sentinel stared at his arm a bit longer. Bummer, he mumbled to himself. He looked up at Foxtrot, Miser, and Quinn and the confusion in their faces. Right, so, the Sentinel explained to them the situation at hand. It seemed that Ray was turning against his creators. For what reason, they did not know. It was only a matter of time before the Sentinel had a thought. Quinn, it's time for you to go home. What? No, I can help, Quinn bargained. I don't even have a home. I'm bringing you back to your time so that you can help. From what I understand, Foxtrot's been training you to fight, is that correct? Yeah? Quinn seemed confused. I don't see what this has to do with anything. I put in a good word at the White House for you. They need an assassin to help with the First War. There's been some Andrometron interference and they need all the help they can get. I want to keep helping you, Quinn shook her head. But I want to keep helping you here. I'm the furthest I can get from home right now and that's what I need. The problem here is clearly urgent and I can help with it. Don't send me back. I have no one else but all of you. Quinn begged. Please, I don't want to go back. I'm sorry, Quinn. You have to. You'll see some of us again, and trust me, what you'll be doing will help with the urgent issue. Promise me that. Quinn stared the Sentinel down. Let it be known that I helped. I did something good. Quinn held out her hand. Miser looked at Quinn inquisitively. The Sentinel took Quinn's hand and shook it once. Promise. The two of them teleported away. The Sentinel dropped her off back in her time, in Washington, D.C. He soon flashed back into the meeting room, alone. You sent her off to her death. You know that, right? Vax reminded the Sentinel. I sent her to do the job she did best. And it had to be now, or she would have died sooner. This is becoming too dangerous, even for you. Vax stood up straighter in defiance. You're not sending me back in time again. I already left you once, and all that did was bring me further into your world. There's one thing I learned from traveling with you is that there's no escaping. The Sentinel was taken aback. It's a good thing I fell in love with this job, isn't it then? Vax walked away, leaving the Sentinel in the room with Foxtrot, Miser, and the Paradox Master. Foxtrot chuckled.